I'm not the best programmer, but I'm a pretty good software engineer. I'm not a prodigy, I don't dream in code, I didn't drop out of high school and join Facebook or Google, and that's okay, because coding or programming is just one part of software engineering. There are so many other characteristics that are equally, if not more important. So for all of you watching who were like me, feeling intense imposter syndrome because you couldn't pass lead code easies, you were failing interviews left and right, and you had to go to TA sessions to get through assignments, it's okay. You can be a successful software engineer too. Let me walk you through my journey. When I joined Bolt, I was an implementer or code monkey, not a thinker. And by that, I mean everything was always given to me. In college, professors would give us assignments with instructions, function signatures, and success criteria. And in internships, my engineering buddies and mentors would give me step-by-step instructions on how to complete my project. I was always implementing solutions others had come up with. And that was okay because I was a junior L3 level engineer. And so to be successful in my role, I just had to take other people's solutions and run with them. But in order to grow in my career as a software engineer and one day become an L4 or L5 level engineer, I'd have to start coming up with these proposals myself. Someone would give me a vague problem, like our APIs have high latency, and I'd have to go figure out the root cause, come up with a solution, get feedback on my approach, and then actually go and implement it, or hand it off to someone so they could go implement it. And to do all this, there's a couple things I had to learn. First, I had to get comfortable reading code. I quickly realized all the senior engineers I'd hit up with questions like, what does this function do, or where can I find this, or why was this written this way, would actually go on and do what I could do myself. They would just read a lot of code. Like literally Control F, go to the function definition, click into the references, and so on. And sure, they could do all of this faster because they were more experienced and knew the code base better, but they weren't some magical oracle that had all this knowledge in their brain. And so I made the conscious effort to always investigate by myself for at least an hour or two before reaching out for help. Lesson number 1, get better at reading code. After all, to make something better, you have to understand how it works in the first place and why it was written the way it was. Maybe they just needed to move fast, maybe they didn't have to think about scale, or maybe they just made a mistake. Second, I had to get better at writing, technically. A huge part of software engineering is documenting decisions, writing stuff down. Everything from why you're proposing a change to how you're designing the system, the smartest people are those who can explain complex concepts so even the average person with little to no technical knowledge can understand them. This is why some interviewers ask candidates to explain the cloud or recursion to a 5-year-old. It's a difficult exercise, but if you can do it, it means you really understand what you're talking about. And my writing was hot garbage. At Bolt, we write a lot of tech specs, which are basically documents explaining what we're building, and we send it out to the entire company so anyone can comment. I'd use acronyms and complicated technical terms to sound smart, but no one could understand what I was saying. And honestly, sometimes I didn't even know what I was saying. So I started spending a lot of time writing, editing, and rewriting tech specs, kind of like you would do for essays in English class. And over time, my technical writing slowly got better. If there were multiple ways of doing something, instead of making a decision, I would write down the pros and cons and open it up for discussion. I'd draw system architecture diagrams so my proposals were easier to understand. And I'd use simple, plain language. Then of course, there's other types of writing, like Slack messages and emails and external facing documentation. When someone would Slack me a question, I treat it like talking to a friend on Messenger. I just write down trains of thought, and my responses were so confusing and all over the place. So I stopped doing that, and I took some time to really write out a clear response so they could get unblocked and save us some back and forth. Writing concisely and formally is an art, and in an increasingly remote world, it's an essential skill and form of communication. The better you can write both technically and non-technically, the easier it will be to own projects, drive change, and influence stakeholders. And the more written evidence you have of your impact, the easier it will be to get promoted. So write well and write often. Lesson number 2, become a better writer. Doctors often say the best surgeons are not those with the steadiest hands, but those willing to come back to the operating room again and again and again. Programming is very similar. Some people are just gifted, and that's cool. It's like surgeons who are born with steady hands. But for most of us, programming is a trade you learn, like cooking or cutting hair. And like any other skill, you can improve. You're not passing leak code easies? No problem, just do some more questions. You're writing spaghetti code? That's okay, just pick up a textbook and read about some design patterns and implement them. You can't figure out how to center a div in CSS? No worries, actually I don't even know how to do that, so I'll get back to you. I always thought some people were just better at programming than me, but most times it's because they're putting in more work. They're reading algorithms textbooks and contributing to open source repositories, or they're just writing more code than me. So of course they were getting better. What's that saying? It takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert? Well, maybe there's a quote for programming. It takes 10,000 lines of code to become an expert, or 100,000 lines of code. I don't know, But the point is, the more code you write, the better you'll get. Lesson number 3, improve your programming skills. Alright, so you're reading and writing lots of code and your technical writing skills are absolute fire, if I say so myself. But what about verbal communication? Meetings and presentations and interviews, they're inevitable. And the one thing they have in common is they involve talking to people. As someone once told me, working with people is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And they were right. Learning to code is easy. You can join a boot camp or take an online class, or you can even look up YouTube tutorials. But learning how to work with people together as a team, that's difficult. As a software engineer, you'll work with sales and customer support and product managers and designers and data scientists and so many other roles. You'll need to keep each of their priorities and motivations in mind and work together to find a compromise that everyone is happy with. You'll need to empathize with their needs, but also be confident enough to push back and stand your ground when necessary. And sometimes you'll have to give feedback, and if it's constructive, that's hard to do, or hard to do well at least. And all this takes practice, but you can start practicing now. If you're in a group project and someone isn't pulling their weight, tell them, or figure out a way to motivate them to want to contribute too. I remember I would take the easy way out and do everyone's work for them, and I'd tell myself, well, that's at least easier than conflict. But life is gonna be a lot of dealing with people, and you're gonna face that reality sooner than later. Listen more and be a people person, and I promise you'll be more successful. Lesson number 4, become a person people wanna be around. And as a software engineer, you're gonna make mistakes, like bring down an entire service and cost the company tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know I have. And the best thing you can do when this happens is sunshine your mistake. And that just means yell it as loud as you can. Tell everyone you caused a problem. And even better, tell them why it happened or what went wrong and what you can do better next time so it never happens again. Learning from mistakes is not about placing blame. Rather, it's about reflecting and really understanding what happened. That's why at Bolt, we have postmortems every other week and all of engineering is invited. We encourage people to speak up and present about their mistakes so we can learn from them. I've learned that taking ownership and sunshining your mistakes often garners respect because people trust that if they give you responsibility and something goes wrong, you won't hide. And this means you'll get bigger projects and ownership of entire features and product lines. I know Netflix has this idea ingrained in their culture, and I think it's something we can all learn from. Lesson number 5. Sunshine your mistakes loudly and learn from them. And lastly, remember that becoming a software engineer doesn't mean you should lose sight of your other interests and passions. For example, I love writing, and some of my favorite classes in college were in the English and philosophy departments. So when I got to Bolt, I started our tech blog and became editor-in-chief, and today I help people craft stories from their amazing technical projects and publish them for the rest of the world to see. I also loved doing hackathons in college, and I wanted to help shape Bolt's engineering culture. So I've been organizing every hackathon since I've joined, and I've helped redesign our interview experience so it's less leak-codey, and we actually ask questions aligned with our day-to-day work. All this is to say, your non-technical contributions are just as valuable as your technical ones. And some might argue the more senior you get, the more these extracurricular company-wide initiatives start to matter. And they usually have more of an impact than any code you write. And also use your time outside of work to pursue your interests and hobbies. And for me, it's been this YouTube channel, and I've been having so much fun with this journey. Lesson number 6. Involve yourself in initiatives that are aligned with your strengths and interests. Hopefully my story has inspired you to continue growing in your software engineering career. You don't have to be a savant or prodigy to be a successful software engineer. Focus on growing technically just as much as you focus on growing personally, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of success. That's all I have for today. Till next time, cheers.